First of all, thank you for coming on today. Again, apologies. The Kink Shrink can't always be here, so this month is one of those where she can't be. So, has anyone not attended one of these sessions before? Quick show of hands. Cool. Okay, reasonable number. Basically, these sessions started, must be about 8 years ago now. There's an awful lot of turmoil going on the scene, and it felt like it was another rinse and repeat cycle. So we all kind of sat down and said, what can we do that's different? And the answer was, let's provide some space for people to come along and ask questions and communicate things as clearly as possible. And we thought, we'll have one of those sessions, that'd be enough. Everyone will get the message and get on board. Yeah. It's basically been one of the most popular features of LAM for about the last 7-8 years. Okay, because we're all new at some stage, so that opportunity to get together in a room and go, hey, what's this all about? What does it mean to me? Am I actually normal feeling like this? Because actually, a lot of people, if you discover kink in isolation, it's very much new. I like the pictures of people wearing stockings. I like the pictures of people wearing fishnets. They're not like fishnets and a goatee, or that might really kind of float your boat. But if that's what you're feeling alone in isolation and the rest of the world is going, no, you can't look at things like that and enjoy them, then damage can get done. So actually, this kind of format where everyone can come together and say, hey, this is what I'm into, this is what I like, this is what I enjoy, am I normal? Hell, the answer is going to be yes. Okay, so that's where these sessions really came about. And along with that, we've started to also integrate a lot of other key messages. Rule number 1, always fully understand consensual kink before you play. Okay, simple as that. Because number of people who are, oh my God, this is shit. It's all based on the books of 50 Shades, and wow, we've got to go in and explore it. Right? We were here a lot longer than that book has been on the shelves. But there are people who come in with a set of perceptions, and some of them aren't always from a good source. So catching people early, communicating and getting that on board is important. We also have an amazing session I would recommend everyone attends called Clear on Consenting Kink. I love my acronyms, because on that one we invite you to come along and do a cock shot. Because we have a Clear on Consenting Kink pop-up, and the idea is, if you believe in the teachings of that particular session, you would put it on your profile. And that way you'd be looking at showing ways of engaging with other people, going, hey, look, consent really matters to me. I want it to be the forefront of communication, and therefore advertise yourselves as wanting that. Okay? And if someone comes along and goes, yeah, what's that Clear on Consenting Kink thing all about? Then you've probably already pre-filtered that person and gone, well, you can sit in the holding pattern until you've got one of those nice pictures on your profile, and then your risk profile will be better, and maybe we could interact from that. So a good way of showing people that you're on the same page in terms of those important messages, because unfortunately we still live in a world where this kind of sensible shit isn't taught at schools, and it really should. It should be part of the curriculum from the lowest possible age up. Okay, if we taught children to say no, don't do that, you don't have their consent, then within a generation or two we'd be a consent focused culture, which would be awesome. But equally, we don't do it to say this is our values of kink, and if you play outside of that you must be doing something wrong. No, we believe that actually these messages are really important to be able to say, oh my God, what does consent mean to you, and what are you prepared to consent to? Because actually you might be looking for something really quite dark and extreme out on one end of the spectrum, and I might not be looking for that, and that's fine. I have the things I'm looking for, you have the things you're looking for. We need to create that space rather than that. Oh my God, you might need that on. That's a disgrace. How can you show yourself in public with those kind of beliefs and views? No, you're never going to fly with us. So we try and keep it as broad as possible, so that people have those conversations about their values and interests as soon as possible, and avoids that situation where, several meetings into an interaction, one of you turns around and goes, "Oh, actually, when we play, I'd like you to call me Daddy." Hard limit can't do that. So have those conversations as early as possible, set those common values, express what it means to you, because it is going to be different for everyone. Okay? Get comfortable with saying what you're into, what you're not into. Get comfortable saying yes to things. Also get comfortable saying no to things. Okay? There's nothing worse than getting months into a relationship and someone turns around and goes, "Actually, when you do that, I'm really not comfortable with it, and I never have been." Because actually, all of a sudden, I'm sitting there going, "Whoa, shit. You mean the last 6 months I've been doing something wrong and you couldn't be asked to tell me?" I feel really shit about that. Okay? Might actually be the kind of thing that sometimes ends a relationship, because it's like, actually, if you didn't communicate clearly about that fundamental issue that has clearly been upsetting you for 6 months, what else have you bothered to communicate about? And is there some great big tsunami of energy building up behind me that's about to crash down all over the top of me because I didn't give you the right brand of chocolate biscuit and fluffy blanket after play? Okay? One of those. Some people, have a very strict regime of what they're prepared to sign up for, what they need. Okay? It might be that you need, a nice hot chocolate afterwards, snuggle in a warm blanket. Yeah. Or equally, I have other people that I play with that are cases of when I go to that stage, I'm non-verbal, my eyes are off in different directions. Don't fucking touch me. Don't talk to me. Don't try and, smother me and mother me. I need to be left alone completely for 10 or 15 minutes until I gain the point where, I can actually coordinate myself enough to drink a warm cup of sugary tea. And then 15 minutes after that, bring me something to eat. And 15 minutes after that, try and talk to me. Okay? Yeah. And it's 45 minutes before you can have a conversation again. Because they've been through an experience, their endorphins have gone up on this really high level, they've entered subspace and gone beyond it. They're not able to verbally communicate in any way. Quite often they're not even capable of, standing up and holding their own body weight anymore. Okay? A number of people at the end of a scene, I've kind of slowly pulled them and dragged them off a spanking bench because the concept of saying, "Oh my God, you're ready to now get up and come and clean this and do all that." No. They're just absolutely just a floppy sack of skin holding the bones and meat together. Okay? There's no cohesion there whatsoever. And equally, there are an awful lot of people who don't want to play in those zones. Okay? They want to play in a very narrow area in the middle. They might not want any bruises or marks, because heavens forbid someone might see them. They might not be into that kind of pain that lasts a couple of days afterwards. Okay? There's an awful lot of people out there, particularly on the more submissive end of the spectrum, who actually they want to feel the sensation of pain for multiple days afterwards. Okay? So they want to have that. I had an amazing Friday night. My arse was leathered black and blue. And Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they're still wincing as they sit down. And it's their kind of subtle reminder for the fun that they had. And actually, if you've got one of those boring routine jobs where everything appears to be the same every single day, I can understand why that little bit of a secret signal can be important to you to kind of maintaining your sanity. Okay. I'm lucky. I'm one of those people who is very self-motivated and self-driven, and as a result, if things are repetitive or boring, I just simply don't do them. Because doesn't make me comfortable. If you ask me to make 1,000 identical things, you will get 1,000 things that are almost identical with literally 990 modifications. Because after the first couple that I've made, I'm going, actually, why don't I just twist and change and make that slightly different? And I'll make a few of those, and I'll carry on going until the last batch will be my final generation of perfection. After I've made 1,000, I never want to do that again in my life. As simple as that. Because I'm driven by new things, interesting things, a bit of magpie syndrome possibly. And it's also why I like events like this, because it's always new and different every single month. Come along, different mix of stalls, different mix of people, different questions, different answers, different vibe and atmosphere, all of the rest of it. After 17 plus years, if it was always the same every single month, I wouldn't be here. I'd be kind of a little bit bored. It would be like, oh God, it's Lamb again. And really must I get out of bed and do this? But yeah, no. Bed at 6. The days where I used to go to bed at 6 o'clock in the morning before Lamb are long gone. Okay? But I think primarily because Subversion, that used to be an amazing club on the Saturday night before Lamb, is no longer running. So actually there isn't anything that is worth burning that candle at both ends for.
With a flamethrower.
With a flamethrower, yeah. While surfing on Bondi Beach in the middle of summer. I mean, yeah, it was a very good fun environment. In fact, some of those over the years, yes. Occasionally there were some choices of venues that were clearly like about to be demolished 3 or 4 days later. But they were made great party venues because you just got a whole bunch of people in with some spray cans, graffitied the walls, and partied on into the night. But there we go. A little bit about Lamb. Started in 2006 at a place called the Clapham Ground in Clapham Junction. We've moved around London a lot. This has been our home for about the last 8 years now. Something like that. I love it because a room like this, I mean, I literally walked into the vault and just went, yeah, are you available next month? We're moving. Because I just needed more space, more room, but I also wanted a better workshop area. And if you think this is good and atmospheric, wait till this evening when we turn it into Red Bondage. Okay, because it is just that perfect environment and atmosphere to do that, because it's nice and contained, it builds up a kind of a vibe. You can sit around the edge and watch, or you can, stick your hand up, talk to people, and get engaged in it. One of the key things about Lamb has always been the educational element, because at the end of the day, we all arrive for the first time, we all have things to learn, we all have things to share, and the world moves on. There are toys and things that people play with nowadays that they were around 15, 20 years ago. Christ, we never thought about it. Huh? I mean, how no one had thought, get up in the middle of the night, if there's Lego on the floor, you step on it, that awful, horrible, nasty sensation. Well, yeah, it took about a decade before someone went, I'll put that onto a bat. So Lego paddles were born at that particular stage. I think the only thing you shouldn't put on a Lego paddle is obviously one of those Christmas trees. Okay, outside of that, well, if you put a forest off them, yes, because then it would just focus all of the pressure down to that one point, and I can see that working. But a single one on its own, I'm thinking that securing the base bit is too small. You know what we're like with plugs? The base has always got to be larger than you can wear them less, yes. But it's more, if the base isn't larger than the widest part of the plug, you're asking for trouble. It's going to disappear. Yeah. And I think it was actually in the papers recently where someone fell into that problem. Yeah. Oh, no, not the pint glass. No, that's another one. Yeah, no, and how on earth that was a live shell as well?
Yeah, Yeah, they went you dropped into A&E to get it removed, and he said, oh, by the way, it's live, so they had to stop doing what they're doing, calling the bomb squad. wrap a lead thing around his backside and then take it out. Because it was live, it could have gone boom. They were about to go in with a tappet hammer and try and get it out, and he said it was live, it blown in a bit.
And equally, where on earth?
That was an accident, by the way. He slipped and fell on right.
But how do you manage to acquire a live 50mm artillery shell that no one notices it's missing?
That's massive.
Possibly. But yeah, it's one of those crazy things. People do the oddest of things. We personally would always advocate, use genuine toys. Okay? Use things that are designed for the purpose. Okay?
Look to self-make toys that look like
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, I do have a drawer at home that when you open it up, it looks literally like a quartermaster's cabinet because it has a hand grenade in there, or a silicon hand grenade, which is an amazing butt plug. And then Eros did a design, must have been about best part of 20 years ago. They were all military inspired. So that every caliber of gun, rifle, artillery shell you can think of. Yeah. And the large ones were really good actually, because they're meaty things. If you ever get raided by the police, hide the things you don't want them to find behind big dildos.
Is that the same company made Garden Gnome?
No, that came later. Well, so the story goes, there is a gentleman who's infamous for having large objects inserted up his anal passage. So he did a porn film where they made a stew. So they basically took all sorts of marrows, carrots, assorted root vegetables. In they went, left in there for a while, all came out, peeled into the pot, big soup was made. And they said to him, surely there must be something that you've always wanted to have inserted inside you, but you've never had the opportunity. So he says, a garden gnome. The film was obviously popular enough that they went into production of the damn thing, and the ass midget was born. Actually, someone tried to borrow it off me because they're going to Rome next week, and amongst my friends, it's kind of traditional to ask to take it on holiday with you. The pictures of it sitting there in the Sistine Chapel, I had to make a little try for it for the day, so it went presentable. Yeah, and it's kind of like,
It's also entertaining, but in hand maybe fresh, right?
yes, yeah. And on my profile, there's pictures of it on safari in Kruger. Okay, it was particularly impressed with the rhino middies. Bowls of poo. But there we go. So that's a little bit about LAM, why workshops important, education to the event. If there is a subject that you would want to have covered, please let us know. Okay, or if you're itching to share some information with others, please let us know. More than happy to put different speakers in here. To that end, I think 4 o'clock is Femdom with Beatrix Coletta. There you go. Also worth mentioning at 5:30, there is a rope class that occurs in here. Now, if you want to attend that and you don't have one of the new advanced tickets, then I would suggest you start queuing at about 5 o'clock. It starts at 5:30. Last month, the queue was down the corridor, round the stairs, across, and was going up the stairs towards the mezzanine. Okay, which is why we now do 15 purchasable tickets for that, because obviously we know some people are desperate and they really want to do a full day of as many workshops as possible, shopping in between, and then the party afterwards. Okay. One of the big kind of take homes, particularly with people who are new to the scene, okay, you've got a lifetime to explore all this shit. Okay, don't race at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Okay, because actually, if we do a quick survey here, if you've been around for 12 months or less, stick your hand up. Okay, 2 years or less, stick your hand up. 3 years or less, stick your hand up. 4, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 15 or above. Okay, so that should give you an indication that actually, because not everyone, like all hobbies, activities, is going to stay and go, right, that's it, oh my God. I first knew I was kinky at the age of 5. Yeah, I did. I knew I was kinky at that age. And therefore, it's been a huge part of my life. Others are brought in and introduced by friends, relatives, girlfriends, boyfriends, partners, whatever. And therefore, they might not be in it for the same long run. So actually, there is this bizarre distribution curve where there is always a lot of people in the scene and community that have only been around for 3 or 4 years, because that's actually the average life expectancy. It's either because people have come on.
Not of them, but very interesting.
This will be why so many goals have really large patios in their gardens. Oh, sorry. This is part of the joy when they raided me. I live on the first floor, so I might really, really peeps think about it. Where am I going to get rid of the bodies? Yeah. In fact, where am I going to get rid of, the huge archive of wheelchairs? But that's another topic. So yes, people don't necessarily spend their entire lives in the kink community, and for various reasons. They either find what they're looking for, they scratch that itch, and they go off and do things more in private. They settle down in a relationship, and they forget that they can come out and do kinky things in public spaces because they're doing it all at home all the time.
And some of us take breaks.
Yeah, some people take breaks for various reasons. They might, get involved with a vanilla person for a few years. It does happen. Yeah. It does happen. And then later in life realise how many years that they've missed of the joy and the fun. And equally, some people come out, I'm going to be honest about this, and they make such an absolute complete pig's ear of their social life that they do have to disappear. Okay? Because like everything, when you come out into this kind of kink environment, who would expect to walk into a room with 100 random people and get on marvellously well with all of them? Yeah, no one's that bold, are they? The reality is you probably will only get on with maybe 15 or 20% of the people in the room. Okay? If you're one of those awesome people pleasers that's got to please everyone, you might be able to eke it out to an imaginary 80% level. But I guarantee you there will be someone like me in the room who's actually quite antisocial. He's like, yeah, no, that might superficially knowing people, but God, if you want to really get to know me, and chuckle at the dark humour, then I'm going to have to make sure that, I can crack that kind of joke comfortably in your presence. Okay, so it takes a bit of time.
Trust.
Yeah, a lot of trust involved with it, because you know what? I might say something for comedic value that other people will be shocked and mortified by. I can't remember which comedian it is that says, joke about a thing and the thing not the same thing. Okay? And I'm very much of that philosophy, always have been. Okay? Nothing is so upsetting that it can't, be cracked a joke about in the right setting. Yeah? I mean, recent bereavement in the family, cracking a joke at the in the creme, probably not the wisest to do. But you know what? If you're going to own the consequences of that kind of behaviour, you might be able to get away with it once in a while. Probably means you won't get invited back to many funerals, but
you ever go back to a funeral? They weren't quite there.
There are circumstances where it can happen.
That's right. My mother did that 2 films.
Yeah. Because they might go.
They got cremated, and then the idea of the fact that they wanted to bury what was cremated. So yeah, she'd have to stuff.
Yeah, there you go. That's one way of doing it. There are a few others as well. Exhume them and have another batch.
I'm getting stuff in popcorn, stuff in Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yes. Haven't thought of that one. Oh my god.
Stuff in bottles full of popcorn.
Yeah. See, they're really funny. I mean, I happen to know because I know a couple of funeral directors. Wicked sense of humour, the whole lot. And they're very funny about what you can put in a casket nowadays.
And that's the one about the coroner. So he always ties together the laces of everybody. Because the zombie apocalypse would be an era.
I think we might know the same coroner, actually. So yeah, it's one of those. You come out to this kind of community, be sensible about what you are doing and how you're interacting. Okay? Because if you run at it like a bull in a china shop, you're not going to be the first person to do it. Okay? We're a very small community at the end of the day. Did anyone read my recent weblog on FetLife? So,
We're assuming everyone knows what FetLife is. Anybody not know what FetLife is? That's how it is. Okay, good.
So I matched with someone on Tinder. We met for a walk in the park. We decided we were going to play. We played a couple of times. And someone matched her on another platform. And she said, oh my God, if you're kinky, because she's really into kink, what's your FetLife handle? I don't use FetLife. I only go on there to wind up Cosmic. Oops. She doesn't reply. So he just volunteers a whole load of additional information about me. None of it was true. And unfortunately, in doing so, he put himself on the wrong side of a particular line. And that line is the Malicious Communications Act. And I don't think he particularly expected me to point that one out to him. And when he apologised, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm never going to do it again. My response was, you are only apologising because you've been caught. Apology not accepted. Because it was one of those. And it's like, sorry, actually, I'm going to have to teach you a lesson here. You said it, there are consequences to saying that. Okay? If you are comfortable enough, to express those opinions, you should be comfortable enough to back it up. Because on this particular occasion, unfortunately, when he started further communicating a load of rubbish, it was when she happened to be at my flat. So she said, how do you want to respond to that? And I'm like, oh, easy. Just grabbed the phone, turned the camera on, turned it to selfie, smiled, and took a picture. To which I got the response, I'm really confused. Fuck, if the picture wasn't clear enough, how am I going to do this? Oh, that's it, verbal communication. Voice note. Please log on to FetLife and see the private message I've already sent you. Have a good evening. Gone. His FetLife account disappeared temporarily. Strange that. But it's one of those. If you're going to go out, have fun, be conscious and mindful of your behaviour, the standards that you are keeping, because, they are going to reflect upon you and no one else, unless, unfortunately, the group of friends around you gets the nudge. Oh my God, that's not sitting next to you at the workshop. A bit dodgy, not too sure about them. Okay? Now, it's one of those, because it's a small community. Or, if there are people who've met you before and, oh my God, they really like you, and they see you with someone that they don't really like, they are going to give you that nudge and a heads up. Okay?
I just want to point out something you might have said in the previous session. You're never sure which Munchmeister, although in general, people who organize things, Munchmeister, you never can tell which of them are getting along and which of them aren't. There are people who absolutely hate each other who put things on in one. Most people, however, get along fine. They're great pals, but
And the answer
you can't
is,
tell. So do be careful. The prejudices tend to leak out.
yes.
During that.
So if you are attending something in an ideal world, the host should be as sociable and as open and as hosting to everyone as possible. Yeah. And my way of approaching that is if I get everything right, the signs are up, the communication and everything's clear, then actually it's a really good environment for you to come in and explore. I actually don't want to be everyone's bestest of mates. Because actually, you know, my life is quite full already, and if I added 5% of the Lamb guests each month, then my Christmas card list would be absolutely fucking huge. I'd spend all day logging on to Facebook going, oh, another 60 of my friends have birthdays today. I should do all the social gratitudes. Okay? It doesn't work like that way in my world. I'm busy enough with the businesses I run. I want quality private time, and therefore I'm of that philosophy that, you know what, I'll come out, interact with people, be as social as I can, but I don't want to live in everyone's pocket. I'm not particularly interested in what the latest gossip is. Now, people come up and tell me what the latest gossip about me is all the fucking time.
You can have your own magazine, a tabloid.
I do have a thread on FetLife. Please feel to verify with me. And it contains all of the absurd things that I've heard said over the years into one big central place. Because that way I can just say, yeah, I've heard that one before, it's verified up on the board. Just go and read it. Yeah. But you're right, it's one of those. There are times when that grace and hospitality breaks down. Okay? So if you're out and you're looking to do due diligence and talk to people and find out information, throw that net as wide as you can. Okay? Talk to as many different people as you can. I generally would say, don't ask event organisers. Okay? Because we're probably the wrong people. Because we're kind of busy at events, we're keeping an eye on everything, but actually, I don't know to find the details of how you interact with other human beings. Wrong person to ask. Ask me if you're a real person, and I'll say, yes, I've seen you at an event. I can confirm that there is a physical entity who meets that description. Whether they're really Goddess Zebra or not, I don't know. I really am not sure, but I can confirm there is a real person that I have met that meets that profile. And equally, when you're out doing that kind of due diligence, don't ask people, is that person safe to play with? Because you'll get an opinion and you'll get a yes or a no. If I go, how do you know that person? You're going to say, I don't really. Or, oh my God, I know them because they used to play with a friend of mine. And all that additional information gives me the answers I'm looking for. Because actually, if I know the person that they've played with before, I can either go to that person and say, hey, talk to me, or I could go back through their profile for 6 months when they were having a relationship and go and look. What kind of mood were they in? Were they writing nice, warm things? How did the relationship end? Okay? Because it's one of those. Now, if the relationship has ended badly, I don't know at this stage whether it's because you were in fact a complete asshat, or whether in fact every one of your relationships ends badly. So I'm going to look, and I'm going to look at as many of the ends of your relationships as possible, and if I find that they've all been absolutely amazing, apart from that one, then I'm going to look at it and say, well, okay, the pattern there might be that actually did an asshat, or it was a bad combination. Okay? And then in which case I'm going to delve a little bit further. I'm going to try and work out who else was down that list and see if their opinions and experiences are the same as yours. I'm going to validate that information, and I'm going to make that decision to say, no, we're not going to play before we've actually done it. Because that way, I have no regrets other than, maybe later in life I'll go, the one thing I regretted was not taking that beating on that lamb on the 2nd of April. Okay? But that's for me to own. That's a risk I'm prepared to take. Okay? What I wouldn't want to do is go, well, didn't bother looking into it. It can't be that bad. Yeah, I'm going to meet this person in a hotel room at the other side of London that's the furthest possible distance from a tube station and no public transport, and I know he's paying cash for the hotel room. Okay? Lots of red flags on that one. Yeah. Oh, and equally, the meeting's got to be between 10 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
And he always picks the room nearest the fire exit.
Yep, there we go. Now, if none of that screams to you, that person is in another relationship, doesn't want their partner to know, which is why they're doing this on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday because they're at a business meeting. And you're looking for like a growing one-on-one intimate relationship where you're going to work together to maybe cohabit, and they're not bothering to tell you at the start that they've got a partner, then, you know, it's not going to go where you want it to go. Okay? So, due diligence checking, massively important. Talk to as many people as possible. Build your own social networks around you. Okay? Because a lot of people come into the scene and they're like, oh my God, I've got to find someone to play with. It's all about the play, isn't it? No, it's not. It's all about having people around you that you can trust and get feedback from, because they're either going to be the ones that go, oh, one day we stick with this one, much more presentable, much nicer individual. Yeah, because they'll give you that feedback because they're emotionally invested in you as a person. Yeah, rather than, oh, well, this is a person I want to try out, spank, flog, or whatever I want to do with it. Okay. Because those will be your support network in the same way that your family are. Okay? Unless you're really unfortunate and have obnoxious narcissistic parents, there is a level of support in there. And I say that jokingly because there is someone I know is watching who is in exactly that same position. Okay? 2 awful narcissistic parents, one verging on likely serious serial abuser, and the other one, their narcissism was to disengage. So the one that disengaged left the other one, who was the greedy, nasty manipulator, to run the house. And as a result, has grown into an adult who doesn't necessarily perceive communications and risks in the same way as the rest of us. It's because they're used to people lying to them as a formative child growing up. So they have a lot of trust issues around that. That doesn't mean that that's always going to be an issue for them, but it means that when it comes to communication and play and stuff like that, they have to be really self-protective. Hey, this is what I'm into, this is my background, please, massively important to me. Even if you think telling me a white lie is for my own good, don't do it. Because once you break that bond of trust, it's broken completely. And it can't be easily repaired. There we go. Should go without saying, is anyone not familiar with the phrase the Dunning-Kruger effect? Okay, the Dunning-Kruger effect is where someone's belief in their competence pushes them into a position where they are more likely to make a mistake. Okay, so for a second. You've suddenly decided to get into marathon running 2 days before the London Marathon. You've bought the most expensive pair of trainers you can, you're kitted out in all the lycra, and you're going to enter the marathon. How well do you think it's going to end for you with that being your first ever marathon? A good example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Okay, because at the end of the day, there are so many people that like, I'm going to do this. The classic one is rope. Oh my God, I saw someone getting tied up the other day. You're wearing slip-on shoes, you can't even fucking tie your shoelaces, and you're declaring to the room that in 3 weeks' time you're going to be suspending someone from their little toe from the centre of the room and using them as a chandelier.
What could possibly go wrong?
Exactly. What could possibly go right? I'll be honest with you all, the number of people who come up and go, I've got this problem. Can't feel anything in my arm. And I'm like, okay, so it was a TK suspension like this, and what's the photographer's FetLife name? And they're like, God, how did you? Because it fucking happens all the time. You can take amazing pictures. You can be stunning at driving a camera, it's not a transferable skill to bondage. Okay? So again, they will go on a one-day course, will watch studiously, and then believe that they have picked up those skills. Okay? Now, 20 years ago when I started going to clubbing and events, we were really, really good at this. And we used to say to people, stunning to watch, isn't it? Don't try this at home. Just don't. Until you can get to a competency level. And then, yeah, we'll help you get to those skills to the right point. But to give you an idea, 12 months. One weekend a month for 12 months will get you to the point where you can do that. Okay? Reality is that's actually 11 opportunities to actually say to the person, look, your skills just aren't getting up to the point. But if they're progressing each month, then you will know by the end of that 12 months, are they going to get to the skill level that they can do this?
I think some business schools, they say it's like 10,000 hours to become an expert in anything.
Yeah. So to become an expert, you've got to do a job full time for 5 years. Okay? Yeah, that person who's going to learn rope and be an expert in 6 months. Yep, 5 years, remember? And that's full time. So actually, if you're going to look at this and say, at best, when you do this part time, 10 years. Okay, so remember earlier in the session where I said the average time that people are on the scene is 3 to 4 years? And yet there are so many people who believe they are experts in kink. Because they've been around for, 6 months or so. Okay. It's just one of those crazy things. When I first started doing this, I was actually in therapy myself, and I needed to decide that I couldn't climb out of the well any longer, so I needed to do some creative tunneling and go off in a different direction. So on the Friday, I was told, spend the weekend, think about your life and what is it that you want to do and what are you passionate about. And I walked into the Priory in Roehampton on the Monday. New rock boots, black leather trousers, black shirt, full length leather coat, middle of the summer. Looked like something out of the Matrix before the Matrix was a film. And my therapist sat down and went, oh, hang on a second. OECD classification 58, post-traumatic stress disorder. 65, consensual sadomasochistic behavior, which is in those days, it was actually a diagnosable psychological condition. We were all freaks, there was something wrong, and we were at risk of being sectioned at any point in time. So I actually sat in my therapist's office and confessed that I was, finally doing something that they could lock me up and have me as an inpatient for. But thankfully, he saw the light. Very interesting character. We still swap news on a regular basis. And several years ago, he found me a nice violet one from a car boot sale. There it was on the table. No one had any idea what it was. Henna. Yep, it was a 1960s, quite modern one. So it was a nice unit, good condition. And all it cost me was, a couple of pints of beer at a pub in Brighton. So it's out there. So yes, be sensible, don't overcommit yourself, go at a steady pace. If you are convinced that you want to be part of kink in 15, 20 years down the line, yeah, it's a great community, we're accepting of all people. I think the oldest person I've ever met in a fetish club was about 98. And his missus is just beating the shit out of him on a cross, and she was probably mid-90s, something like that. But they've been doing this for years and years. And everyone literally knew them as the crazy old couple that you'd think, Christ, if you blew on his skin, it would break. But no, she was there, leathering the hell out of him on every opportunity. So yes, you can enjoy this for a very long time. But again, you've got to be sensible about it. Because if you rush like a bull in a china shop and attempt to go through a BDSM checklist as if it's some kind of scavenger hunt time trial, I guarantee you'll get to the last box No unicorn's going to jump out of a cupboard shitting glitter and rainbows. No one's going to give you a prize for it. Okay?
Have you got any advice when you've met a new person and they're a keen bee and they're going, oh yeah, like I want to do this, I want to do that, and you're trying to do things. Say like, take your time, go slow, blah blah blah. Give the correct, well-informed advice, but they're still going full hog. Is there any advice that you would give to try and without being too controlling, I guess, or being like, I don't know.
Okay, this might be slightly controversial. My advice is going to be protect yourself.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So actually say to someone, look, the reason why I'm not jumping on that roller coaster with you and going at 1,000,000 miles an hour is that, I know that a lot of people who adopt that strategy suddenly find themselves going around the corner too fast and derailing. Or that they forget that they're about to run out of track and they're going at 300 miles an hour and all of a sudden there isn't enough track to slow themselves down. Okay, so literally say to them, if you carry on down that path, you are going to hit those buffers at some stage. I don't want to be the one who gets blamed for pushing you onto those buffers.
There's a really good post that Deb's done on FetLife, but also there's a couple of people written about it. It's both dom frenzy and sub frenzy from both sides of it, because it's not just subs that do that, it's doms who go after the same thing. So if you look on either FetLife or just Google sub frenzy or dom frenzy, you'll find really good articles about exactly those sorts of things. Where people just get so into it because I think as Deb's often says, you get dopamine, endorphins, all the other fun chemicals. Your body just goes, yes, I've never had this before, and then you just go off on it. We have really, really good articles on it. And it's how I found it handy because some people, if you're trying to have a relationship with somebody, so as you said, you don't explain it to them. But if you said, I recommend you read these, it's a third party. Some people, funny enough, respond to a third party a lot better than they do with a one-to-one. So just going to say, I recommend you go and have a read of these.
Point into the information.
Yeah. Or go to the archive on YouTube, find the right sound index where the point is brought up at one of the sessions, and fire it through to them. Oh my God, this is really good advice. Okay, because again, it's a third party, it's that separation, it's a person that they will generally respect as an educator, which I'm not saying that they shouldn't with you, but actually that's not the primary drive of their connection. Yeah? So actually you're turning around and saying, right, I want you to get this information from the right source, go off and read that.
As a metaphor, would you teach your partner how to drive? Most people who've got bikes, never in a million years are going to get driving instructors to do that.
I think we've hit a nerve over there. Have you passed yet?
About a year and a half ago, yeah.
Oh,
it's
Definitely
stressful.
not down to him.
But again, it might also be that it's the wrong type of
It
dynamic.
did not work.
Yeah. So if you are, for example, I don't know which way around your dynamic in terms of power exchanges is, but if, for example, you are the dominant one in the bedroom, having someone else teach you a skill who's in the relationship who you at one level see as submissive, never going to work as a power exchange. And equally, if you are in dominant mode trying to teach a submissive to do something, it can actually spoil the relationship as well. So it's that whole, the ethical dominant decision is to outsource that skill exchange, okay? Because that way, not only are you outsourcing the transfer of knowledge, but you're also outsourcing the stress that goes with it. Yeah? Because so much easier for you to come home and have a bitch about your driving instructor than come home and ruin the entire evening.
Just don't come home at all.
Well, I'm thinking you're a bit screwed on that one because you're in the same car. Okay, so unless it's like, learn to drive plus dogging, then
Sounds like workshop.
Absolutely. The chances are you're probably still going home with him, if that makes sense. It's one of those. So yes, think about how you educate when it's appropriate to, because at the end of the day, there is nothing worse than I kind of laughed and I'm going to use the Chatham House rules on this, so no one ever asked me who this was.
Don't mention it's being recorded. Don't forget.
Yeah. So I go into a club, and some probably 15, 20 years younger than me, dominant, goes to introduce me to his new No Limits slave they've been playing for about 3 months. This is so and so, and she's done everything. And without even breaking my stride, I said, "Oh, she's been hung upside down with a dildo handled sword and used as a vase." Nope, I've not done everything then. And that was it. That was all I needed to do, because actually any other form of engagement wasn't going to be good for any of us. Now, because to me, it's like, oh my God, is this really a game where the best person in the room is the person who's done the most things? No. There's a guy that I used to watch clubbing about 17, 18 years ago. Never particularly brought many toys with him to clubs. Okay. Clearly, he'd been in the lifestyle for a very long time. He made all his own clothes. Really amazing guy. And usually, he'd turn up with a thermos flask, a long chain, and a long-handled spoon. Okay. And what this man could do with a thermos of ice cream, fascinating to watch. Just absolutely fascinating, because he'd lay someone out on a table, and it would almost be as if magic urchins appeared with candles and sconces and were holding space. And it was almost like a bubble where you could watch from the outside and felt almost like you were watching something in bullet time. Everything just, even the dust was falling, which was magical. And this great energy to it. But I never saw him with a flogger, a cane, or anything of that kind of nature. It was always literally this thermos flask, long-handled spoon. Okay? And yet he exhibited so much control and so much interaction and paid so much attention to the people that he was playing with, that actually, and in those days, I was very monogamous with the person that I was with. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm non-dairy, fucking up on the table. Go for it, sweet. I can't engage in that. I mean, next time I might come out with a thermos of sorbet or some new non-dairy ice cream. But actually, I was like, yeah, it was just, and to me, it was just like, I want to see this because I want to see her have that level of interaction and see what that energy exchange is like. So yeah, it's not necessarily the person who's done everything in the room or has the best toy bag or the best pair of leather trousers. It's often, you know, that one thing that you see out the corner of your eye that you go, wow, that's really good fun to watch that. Because they're just playing amongst themselves in almost like a bubble of energy. Nothing worse than kind of like what I would call ostriching, where they're like flogging someone and checking around the room to make sure that everyone's watching them. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, no, sorry, can't watch that shit. It drives 7 devils into me. But actually, if it's two people intensely engaging and playing, and they don't give a shit about the rest of the room around them because they're just totally absorbed in that exchange, then that to me is just like really hot, and I like to watch it. So there we go. Does anyone have any questions? I'm aware that I've rabbled on for the best part of an hour there. Come on, someone must have one. Okay. Or you're sitting here going, oh, I can't admit this in public. And actually, a valid point there is that if we asked you all to write down your fears and phobias about the scene and community before you came into the room, I'm guaranteeing you that about 70% of them would all be the same. Okay? Oh my God, what if people don't like me? Shit, you know what? Might be possible. But strangely enough, within this community, as long as you are not some rabid white supremacist, nasty piece of shit, most people will find you acceptable. Because actually, you know what? It's not as if we can walk down Wetherspoons and sit there and say, oh God, got this awful problem. I had this filthy, dirty slut sitting on my lap the other day and she stained my trousers. You can't have that conversation in Wetherspoons without being kicked out. But
A lot of
actually,
monitors
this
in
is
Wetherspoons.
what's that?
A lot of monitors in Wetherspoons.
There are indeed. I've never been to one.
I'd say one thing, I'm in a like 3-4 year in the kink scene. There are other things, but I'd say that, like, have you ever heard the expression 32 flavors of ice cream? It's kind of like your flavor changes
Oh,
over the years.
The Baskin Robbins. Yeah.
And so what, depending who I'm talking to or how they, like, even people I know better, I have to kind of keep them updated with kind of like what my current situation, what my current desires are.
Okay.
And I find I love it when people tell me, but it's whether they know that they can and
Okay.
able to.
So I apologise to everyone below the age of 35 in the room. This is a lesson you are yet to learn. Okay. Of the rest of us, and particularly the ones that are a little bit more grey-haired than the others, how often would you say you have changed across the course of your lifetime? Okay, because I'm on about a 4 or 5 year cycle. My interests change, my things that I'm into will be steered in different ways, just in the same way as music. Okay, it's obvious that we don't have anyone in the room here who's a 1950s model rocker. You spot them occasionally in the street. You don't need to guess what their music genre is, and their music genre has invariably not changed since the 50s or 60s. Okay, so they're a good example of someone who is like locked into their identity. Actually, the vast majority of us adapt and evolve and are constantly changing. And that's also why communication with partners in relationships is so massively important, because what you're into on day one is going to change as your influences change.
In your question, do you think it was you think it impacts the people you want to play with? Is it existing people or new people?
I think in my particular scenario, there's like in a sort of in a circle, I now there was a heavy impact play that I took, and that impressed some people. Yet, because of the scene, the situation, the relationship, I felt comfortable enough to be able to take it. Yet with other people, and that I basically just saying clear, I'm not into pain today. Like, I've got nothing to prove, but there is, like, you can build up a reputation.
Yes.
And like sometimes it can be harder to cut. Like, well, it's just like you have to go.
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't want to.
Equally, there are trends within the community as well.
Sure.
So at the moment, needle players on the download. There's not much of it that goes on. Whereas
Ropes on the up.
yeah, rope is on the up at the moment.
Despite the fact it's the second most dangerous thing you can do after waterboarding.
And then 15 years ago, oh my God, you weren't a true submissive in London unless you had a needle back corset picture that had been done at one of the big clubs.
I'm with you on needle phobic. He says having tattoos.
And literally, it was just almost like a fetish passport. If you didn't collect that stamp that you'd had your corset done, if you hadn't been suspended, if you hadn't been flogged, if you hadn't done knife play by so and so. And it was literally almost like a prescriptive checklist that people were going around going, oh my God, it's Hades on Saturday night. Do you think I could get so and so to stamp me off for my knife play? Absolutely fucking shocking. But as a result, you would have these patterns that would go on. Okay? Again, in your example, you did a scene that then attracted the attention of other people. Now, so if I'm doing a heavy impact play scene with someone, I will warn the person beforehand, you're going to get a lot of attention because of this. Because actually, all of a sudden, all of the sadists around the room are going, oh, she's taking that
Well,
nicely.
actually, the one I'm talking about, we done the whole cassette. I knew what I was getting into, and but what we did forget is to tell a dungeon master, and they came and stopped. Didn't speak to the Dom, spoke directly to me while I'm like on the edge of don't know where I was, and then I had a battle of two egos saying what was right, what was wrong, and it could have been handled better, but then it was a drama.
Yep.
And the event organizer was involved, and
it's so much easier to say, hey, we're about to do something that's a little bit intense. Can I have a DM to act as a shield? Okay. And one of our previous venues, there were a couple who used to come. One of the reasons they attended around every single month was they couldn't play at home because the toy bag contained baseball bats and very, very heavy objects. There was a lot of screaming involved. It was all consensual. They absolutely loved it. And every time they came to play with us, I would have two DMs, one on either side of the play area that they were in. If anyone even came close to interrupting them, the DM met them before they got close enough and said, no, we're aware of this, it's all cleared and been sorted out. Now, didn't stop me coming home one month and finding all over FetLife, oh my God, it's fucking disgraceful. How dare they let people like that play at LAN? It's supposed to be an event for newbies. Fucking hell, is it? I can't remember signing up 17 years ago to run an event entirely for newbies. Doesn't seem right to me. And actually, in that venue, we had 4 separate rooms. So rather than spend 15, 20 minutes trying to build up a group of people to raise a complaint about it on the evening and not succeeding, they could have easily moved to one of the other parts of the venue, had a thoroughly enjoyable time, done whatever they wanted to do, and not be impacted by other people's play. So they were a little bit shocked when I said, yeah, no, the one who's not done something correctly today is you. And also by not raising it, by bringing it up on a public forum, because how do those people feel? You know? You've shamed them and said that their play is unacceptable to be done in public because it was too hard for you.
yeah, it became it was a unique position for me as the sub in that moment. I had 2 professionals, let's say, one was on one, one was on the other, and everything they were saying was both valid.
Yeah.
But there was 2 egos having
they've missed the opportunity to communicate. And equally, it's probably because you're not known for doing that level of play. So they probably looked and made the assumption as a DM, hang on a minute, you don't normally play that fast.
I was in a new category, I guess, in that scene.
Yep. So they were looking at it going, now I'm used to you getting up to about a 4 or a 5 out of 10, but this is clearly in the 9s, 10s, and 11s, and we don't associate you with that. So they would have done it for the right reasons to protect you.
Yeah, exactly.
But possibly in that particular case, if someone's already deep in subspace, DMs, awesome people. Svengali communicators with telepathic abilities, they are fucking not. Okay? So actually you need to realise that as much as you want to check in with the person who's in subspace, they're in fucking subspace. Therefore, the best you can do is check in with the top, make sure that they're making the right noises.
That was the other one's point of view.
And then also wait till the sub recovers and check in and just say politely, if you're going to do that again in my dungeon, do me a favour, give us the heads up and warning, because we didn't anticipate that you were going to do that. It's one of those crazy things.
It was basically because I was very, very loud.
That never helped. Never helped at all. Never helped. Sometimes I've known couples who are, shall we say, louder than the impact justifies. Because again, not everyone has a good enough relationship with their neighbours that at 3 o'clock in the morning you can shout, fuck me senseless because I'm a dirty whore. Right? Some neighbourhoods, it doesn't go down too well. Okay? I'm lucky in my neighbourhood, I have special dispensation from the local authority as a person of alternative sexuality to make as much noise as is necessary for me to continue with my right to exist in a private life. It's been a long and protracted conversation, but we have got there. Okay? It's one of those. So yes, it's one of the reasons why we provide this space and keep it as marshalled as we can, because we are very much aware that, you know, you live at home with your parents, they probably don't want to hear some of the things that get screamed at full volume.
Or with your children.
Yes, or with children around. Yeah. Or, you know what? It's not really fair to check into a travel lodge. Because there are.
It seems like a good idea.
Seems like a good idea? Absolutely. Until you know people who work in hotels. Things like that go on in hotels all the time, but actually there are limits to where it needs to be. Okay, if it's big, loud, whip cracking and noises like that, you probably want to be looking at, you know, a detached property in its own grounds that you'll find on Airbnb.
Not a Tesco car park.
Definitely not. Well, it depends. If it's the Tesco, if it's the Tesco car park in Hammersmith, that used to be London's big dogging spot. But I think they built flats on the top of it to try and stop that happening. But there we go.
Oh, I thought Tesco car park on a Sunday night, then they did all night closing, or what I opened.
Yeah. Oh God. When they first started doing that, I was up at a fetish event in Kidderminster, and one of the most hilarious things is walking into the Tesco's at 1 o'clock in the morning in your full fet. And one of the people I hadn't realised until the lights went on, the lace top and lace bottoms under bright fluorescent tubes, possibly a little bit too see-through. Back of the car, low lit, it looked like it was a kind of a nice grey colour. Wasn't really that transparent. God, did the security guard have an enjoyable night. I think he was doubling as the cleaner as he walked around, and his tongue is literally cleaning the floor underneath him. But yeah, thankfully at 1 o'clock in the morning there were no like children in there, etc. So we weren't really offending anyone. But they're that worried they should have dressing gowns by the front door. Take a tip from us. Give people some comfort while they're going around. Right. Any other questions? Come on, someone must have one for me.
No, I'm really going to ask, only because it's happened to you a couple of times. Where people try to out you at work.
Oh, yes. And this is a very, very difficult one. Because if...
I mean, the scenario says it's not happened, but where it happened there. Is it okay to say, well, we found you on X website? Well, you were on X website. The only way to get on X website was because you logged into it. Therefore, it's not a surprise. But if they then decide to go, well, I think that's blatantly you, and then report your HR or something.
Okay, so this should be nice and straight and level, but unfortunately it's not. So, if you work in what's called a notifiable profession, teaching, education, you're a lollipop lady. They're notifiable professions, oddly enough. Okay? Don't get caught with your picture on FetLife because you will lose your job. Full stop. Okay? Simple as that. Police is another one. I know a police officer at the moment who isn't a police officer because someone decided that they shouldn't be on FetLife. Jesus, the number of fucking police officers on FetLife is embarrassing, but there we go. Teacher, yep. Anything where you're working with children, vulnerable medical professionals, even dentists and stuff like that, you get caught being kinky and they classify it as bringing the profession into disrepute and it's instant dismissal. Okay? So if you're in one of those, don't post your face picture in any accessible way on the internet. Full stop. Okay? Just don't do it. It should go without saying, don't subscribe to the Lamb newsletter from your corporate email address. Don't subscribe to my newsletter from your government employee email address. People do this shit. Okay? So that's number one, think on that particular level. Number two, if you can and you don't believe it is going to impact you in any way, shoot the gun before someone points it at you. Go to HR and say, I have to have a conversation with you. Sorry about this, but there is a risk. There is a risk that someone may attempt to intimidate or blackmail blackmail me because on the weekends this is what I do. I don't bring that stuff to work. I believe that I have a right to a private life. I have not mentioned it to any of my colleagues, and that's a really key and important one. Okay, but if it comes up, I need the company to protect me, and actually they will, because you disclosed it beforehand and all the rest of it, and they can make that decision. Remember, it is not a protected characteristic. Okay, you can't turn around and say, I'm kinky, I deserve the same rights of protection in the employment and workplace as someone who is on the gender blending spectrum. It doesn't work that way. Okay, we still don't have that right. So if you can, preempt it by being very, very clear from the absolute get-go. Okay, if a situation does appear and starts to spiral out of control, okay, don't get emotional about it. Okay, because if you get angry, you will give them the ability to move you out of the location because of your anger management issues. If you are fast and sensible and say, what, do I not have a right to a private life? Okay, then all of a sudden the HR go, oh, hang on a second, yeah, we have to be very delicate with this one, stepping it forward. Okay, I mentioned don't blurt it around the office. Okay, there was someone a couple of years ago who ended up losing a very high profile position because they were blurting it out around the office. Now, they attempted to use the right to a private life as a defence, and everyone quite rightly put out, well, you had a private life until you started bragging about it around the office. And your colleagues did not need to know that you were poly and had 3 girlfriends and 4 boyfriends and this, that, and the other, because it's not appropriate to the working environment. Had no one been aware of it, and you were suddenly outed by someone taking a malicious action, it's very different. And a lot of companies will act to protect people when it's appropriate. Okay? But notifiables, sorry, play the ostrich games, stick your head in the sand, keep quiet about it. Everything else is your judgment call, how you wish to progress with that. Okay? No one can out me because I'm absolutely fucking out to everyone. Simple as that. But that is by design. I work for myself. I walk into a job and someone goes, what's with the leather trousers? Are you kinky or something? Yeah, I am. Now, at that stage, they have a choice. They can either object, and I'll leave them with the problem that they've got, or they can suck up their prejudices and allow me to get on with my work. Simple as that. And thankfully, I work in the kind of field where, the opportunity to either fix the blood-sucking insects that are living in your house, or be fucking off and going down the road and fixing someone else's, most people will suck it up and say, yeah, I'll take it on board. But it's not as if I walk in wearing a lamb shirt going, whoa, kinky, look at my forehead, let me beat the insects up with my violet wand. No, I'm just going about my day as normal. If it crops up, I'm blunt and factual about it, and equally will say to people, if you have a problem with it, then you just fuck off and leave you with the problem. It doesn't bother me at all, because I don't want to work for people who are, that level of bigoted. Because you might turn around and say, fucking perverts and kinksters, and the next words out of your mouth might be, fucking old people, or people of this particular skin tone, or gender, or sexuality, or fans of a particular type of music. It's all a form of bigotry, and it's just not required. Yeah?
I've heard of Charleston House rules, can't say who they are, but clients finding out and then pulling out of their service.
Yeah, it happens. And it's a shame, it happens, I think, less nowadays. But 15 years ago, I walked into a pitch for a business meeting, and I knew the moment I walked into the door, I was not going to get that contract. Because the chief executive of the company, I'd seen him 7 days earlier, dressed in something completely different. So he came out, and all of the people in the tender with me went, oh my God, I think that went really well. And I'm like, sorry guys, you're not going to get this one. What? I said, you're not going to get this one. Even if you're the cheapest, you are not going to get this one. However, if you apply for a contract in one of the contiguous authorities immediately around it, you will get it, even if you're the highest bidder. And they're all just like, what? I said, yeah, sorry, I can't explain to you how I know some of the people in that room, but I know them in a very different context to the rest of you. And we just left it at that. It's a shame, because actually, the fact that the most senior person in the table had a particular penchant for activities that their colleagues probably were never going to be told about, it's their issue. I was never going to bring it up. Totally inappropriate. Why would I? My colleagues didn't even know the particulars of why he would not give us any work. Just one of those. Shame really.
Very sad that he wasn't more secure about it.
Yes, yeah. But there are certain kinks where you understand that people are going to not necessarily have the right initial perception.
Not all of them.
Well, some more than others.
Sure.
And it's just, we were back in a time where if someone had called me daddy in a Fet Club, there was about a 50-50 chance that someone was going to threaten to call social services.
Understood.
And it's just like, whoa, I got a minute, for God's sake. Clearly not my biological daughter, you know. Got nothing to do with social services. You know, we're adults in a relationship. But it was so triggering to some people in that mentality that it was just like, yeah, bang out of order. Well, it reminds me of a spanking party I went to one time. And the spankers used to be very separate from the Kingsters, because literally they would do hand spanking and they would do maybe slippering, and maybe the really adventurous ones would move on to a paddle or a tours. But actually, the rest of us Kingsters, with our nakedness and our electrics and our strange things, was just a little bit too much for them. So I was there and someone said, well, what are you into then? Rope bondage. That's not what she heard. Another 4-letter word, but the O was changed to the vowel and went completely off the fucking deep end. Took about 5 minutes to calm her down, and I'm like, sorry, I know what I said. What did you hear? I heard this. Well, that's fucking bad on you, isn't it? How can you look at a person and make that judgment call from you mishearing it? Do you not think you should probably check before you go off at that kind of reaction? Very uncomfortable rest of the afternoon for them, because I didn't get upset about it. I just said, no, that's your fucking shit to own. You can call me that, but no, thank you, I'm not going to take ownership of that. You need the cotton buds and clean your ears out, because, you know, R-O-P-E, rope, bondage, the two words go together. How you manage to convert a crime and a good fun social activity and throw those two together, that's shit in your head, it's not on my back. But there we go. And equally, if you are at an event and see something that you're not certain of, okay, or it makes you feel uncomfortable, come and talk to the crew, okay? Because it might be that we can turn around and just say, oh, actually, have you never thought about that kink as regression? So if you happen to be, you know, Fortune 500 CEO with a very, very high pressure, stressful job in a company that's worth a couple of billion a year, you might go off once a month and dress as an adult baby and have a total regression afternoon and let all the stresses of the rest of the world melt away. Now, a lot of people don't see that, and they don't see the regression value of it, and they're just like, fucking adult dressed as a baby, what do they think they're playing at? And they don't see what they're actually getting out of it. Is that regression, that release, that ability to, you know, maybe 6 hours of their entire month, not have to worry about thousands and thousands of other people who are relying upon them. Just one of those crazy things. But most people will look at it and assume it's entirely sexual rather than, you know, an opportunity to address, relax, and rewind.
Equally, looking at it, it's none of my business what it is to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we expect everyone to you know, not yuck on anyone else's yum. Your kink is okay if it's not my kink. But the strange thing is, it's always the same groups of kink that flag problems to people. Because as much as we'd like to think that we are this great and open society, we still have some of the problems that are inherent in human beings, judgmental behaviour and stuff like that. You've got to learn to be open, because invariably most of us don't grow up in households that are, open, expressive and communicative. I know a few people who have, and it's hilarious because it gets to this stage where the parents have to say, okay, we've had our time at Lamb, we're now going to have to step to one side and let the kids come, but every 4th month or so we need to come back because we need to restock on candles and wax, commission a new outfit and stuff like that. And it's crazy, there are a few of those as part of our community, but just not enough. Okay, I think I have done my pretty much 90 minutes worth. The next workshop is going to be 4 o'clock, which is on Femdom. If anyone has any questions or suggestions, please give us